You have to start with you.
Live from the 4th of July.
What? That's a time.
in beautiful
Earth.
I'm sorry, we're a little bit late today, but we're not as late as we could be. Anyway, I've got a...
He's going to let Earth Woman speak before she goes shopping.
Okay, Earth Woman would like to speak.
Really?
Would you like to speak, Earth Woman? Okay,
No.
Earth Woman is now speaking.
Oh, goodness. Happy Independence Day, the day to remind us that we all need each other desperately.
That's my idea of independence.
I'm remembering my family picnics and getting misty. My Aunt Marie with her cotton shirtwaist house dresses, and my Aunt Helen with her homemade too frizzy perm, and everybody laughing and talking in a park, eating wonderful homemade stuff. Anyway, and my dear cousins who I love with all my heart. And anyway, and also thinking about it's a day of unity, and I don't just mean because independence is, well, we're all, as Dr. Bronner says, we're all one.
All one, Dr. Bronner, yes.
So I just, you can read a Dr. Bronner's label. No, I don't really have much to say except that I really would like us to think about unity today, and I don't just mean unity of this country, because that would be silly. I mean of everyone and everything, and I'll give you a good 4th of July toast.
A toast
to unity and the eventual joy of disillusion all.
Very good.
Okay, now
universal unity and the joy of disillusion all.
Yes, which comes
excellent,
after that.
excellent. Yes. Okay, Sprouts is open today,
and I'm wearing weird clothes.
Oh, yeah.
I'm wearing a dress that my mother made for me. 46 years ago. I sent her the fabric and the pattern because I couldn't find any weird enough clothes for me to wear, and I somehow saved this one. There was a couple others, but I wore them to shreds. Anyway, and this one's almost in shreds. So anyway, so I'm having very weird thoughts, even weirder than normal. So you have weird thoughts today too, but make them happy weird thoughts.
Okay, I'll try to give them a few weird thoughts to think about too.
Okay.
So.
Goodbye now, please. I'm not good.
Okay, I'm going to go in there and wash my hands a little later. Okay. Okay. All right. Let me flip it around. There we go. That was Constance DuQuette.
Earth Woman.
Thank you, Constance. She's my favorite Earth Woman.
But you don't like unless your favorite one.
And I like the rest of you too. Okay, now I've completely forgot what I was going.
Good, you'll be inspired. Be inspired then.
I'll be inspired. Okay, I've got a couple things. Now I'm going to share with you some things that I'm sure I've shared with you before, at least little pieces of it and things. But two things are going on right now. One is the Independence Day or the 4th of July, with all of the crazy domestic situation going on in the country at the moment. It doesn't feel as festive and is carefree and joyous as 4th of July's of my childhood were. It's always a bit depressing when, well, anyway, we won't. I'm not a political commentator. I just hate to see any countries slip into fascism. But I digress. One of the good things that is going on is the publication of my new book, An Accidental Christ, and it's a novel. And I never expected, and I still don't expect anything that I would write that, at least on the surface, seems to be a work of fiction, because it's kind of my thing to comment on hermetic things, or magical things, or mystical things, or you know, spooky stuff. That's sort of what I specialize in. Tarot, Kabbalah, things like that. And I know people feel kind of funny when they're used to reading material that's coming from, that's relating to their education, magical or otherwise, and they sort of get to know. They get to know the mind of the author and of the writer or the teacher, and then when they read a work of fiction that came out of the imagination of the writer, they feel they know the writer so well that they can't sort of suspend their disbelief, at least at first, to get into the work. It's like when you'd all of a sudden your father or your brother would say, "I wrote a book. Do you want to read it?" And then you read it and you go, no matter how good it is, and no matter how good it would seem to somebody that didn't know your father or brother, whoever wrote it, you know them and you go, "Oh, that's corny," or you're almost embarrassed. It's almost like reading your own poetry from when you were 10, you know. But it came out last month, and I'm getting a lot of emails and contacts from people, most of whom I don't know, that are very interested in the objective history aspect of the story, particularly the character of from a historical standpoint, of who the character was, the mystic, the teacher, the holy man, around which the legend, the myth of Jesus would form over the centuries. We can see things like that at work right now, even with the character of modern holy people. Yogananda and his veneration of his gurus, and these were actual people with backgrounds and educations, and what education, what support system, who their disciples really were. And all of these I bring up as the backstory of the narrative that I'm telling in Accidental Christ. And one in particular even concerns information, objective, empirical information that we do have about the characters that and the milieu that was surrounding the events that we've come to know as being described in the Gospels. And it brings up a lot of questions about where and how Jesus was educated. Okay, we think he's just, running errands at the carpentry shop until he's 12, and all of a sudden he can go to the temple and argue Kabbalah with the priests. Okay, now the kid got himself educated someplace. Okay, and there were plenty of wonderful, awesome, I won't say organizations, but sects that were teaching that stuff. The Essenes, the Therapeuti. Anyway, I bring all of that into question, including the fact that his family was not poor. Okay. Anyway, what has all of this to do with the 4th of July and all of this? And especially, what does it have to do with the Knights Templar? Okay. And a lot of the questions that I'm getting and comments concerning the plot of an accidental Christ surround the fact that well, in order to answer many of those questions, I have to refer them to another book that I wrote, another nonfiction book called The Key to Solomon's Key. Now, this is the one that sort of draws in the circumstances of the creation of the Knights Templar, what their raison d'etre was, and what their secret might have been, and all of that. And so I've been referring people to this book, which I've shared it with you in many different episodes, but I'm going to share some more with you today. But when it comes to the Knights Templar and their connection with or non-connection with Freemasonry, one or the other or both, I gotta first of all point you to the works, and if you can ever get a chance to hear the lectures of Timothy Hogan, he's my brother and my friend. Timothy Hogan really knows his Knights Templar stuff, and he knows it from a Masonic point of view. He knows it from a scholarly point of view, and he knows it from a Knights Templar point of view. So I'm giving a big shout out to Timothy Hogan. But anyway, Aleister Crowley was also a Mason, and well, there'd be Masons that says, no, he was a clandestine Mason. Oh, no, he was Cyrano, Scottish Rite, and all this stuff. But anyway, he wrote in pretty early on in his career, in the 1914, 15, 16, the Book of Lies. And he wrote this thing here in chapter 33 of the Book of Lies. And I'm going to hold up, you're probably seeing this in reverse. Baphomet. A black two-headed eagle is God. Even a black triangle is he. Do you see the triangle? In his claws he beareth a sword, yea, a sharp sword is held therein. Do we see the sword? There it is. The eagle is burnt up in the great fire, yet not a feather is scorched. This eagle is swallowed up in the great sea, yet not a feather is wetted. So flieth he in the air, and lighteth upon the earth at his pleasure. So spake Jacobus Burgundus Molensis, the Grand Master of the Temple, and of the god that is ass-headed, did he dare not speak. Now, many of you will kind of recognize that if you squint your eyes, let me, no, without losing my page here, can see, if you squint your eyes, you can see that Baphometic image in the double-headed eagle, the family coat of arms of Frederick the Great. But that's the double-headed eagle of the Scottish Rite. Let's see, I wonder if I got the commentary. I think I do. Hang on for a second. It's really short. The commentary Crowley wrote on that was 33 is the number of the last degree of Masonry. Well, of the Scottish Rite anyway. And it was conferred upon Frater P in the year 1900 of the Vulgar era by Don Jesus de Medina Sidonia in the city of Mexico. Baphomet is the mysterious name of the god of the Templars. The eagle that's described in paragraph 1 is that of the Templars. This Masonic symbol, however, identified by Frater P with a bird, which is the master of the four elements, and therefore of the name Tetragrammaton. See, Yod, He, Vav, He, fire, water, air, earth, burned up by the fire, drowned in the water, flies in the air, lands on the earth. Okay? Jacobus Burgundus Molensis, or Jacques de Molay, suffered martyrdom in the city of Paris in the year 1314 of the Vulgar era. The secrets of his order were, however, not lost and are still being communicated to the worthy by his successors, as intimated by the last paragraph, which implies knowledge of a secret worship, of which the Grand Master did not speak. The eagle may be identified, though not too closely, with the hawk previously spoken. That's in a previous chapter. He goes on to say, perhaps it is the sun, the exoteric object of worship of all sensible cults. It's not to be confused with other objects of mystic aviary, such as the swan, phoenix, pelican, dove, etc., so on. Okay. Now, I'm just going to take it briefly from chapter 6 of Key to Solomon's Key. If you've ever read the book Foucault's Pendulum by Umberto Eco, it's marvelous. But one of his characters in the book, it's a novel too that everybody should read as something more than a novel. One of the characters is talking about the Templars And he says, the Templars have something to do with everything. There's a story that's often repeated by secret society and conspiracy buffs that in 1792, during the French Revolution, nearly 500 years after the martyrdom of Jacques de Molay, at the moment the guillotine severed the head of King Louis XVI, an unnamed man leapt upon the scaffolding, plunged his hand in the king's blood, and shouted, Jacques de Molay, tu es vengé, or Jacques de Molay, thou art avenged. Actually, I don't know if that actually happened. That's the legend. But I think it pretty much actually did happen. At the French Revolution, they dug up the body of Cardinal Richelieu and chopped off the head of the corpse. And somebody yelled, Jacques de Molay, thou art avenged. But anyway. Another unsubstantiated legend holds that upon hearing the news of the king's education, the same words were reportedly uttered by Adam Weishaupt, the founder of the notorious and for a brief time Masonically connected Bavarian Illuminati. Whether accurate or not, it is certainly true that these stories were widely circulated almost immediately after Louis's death, and the phrase continues to this day to be the watchword for revolutionary acts that resist and strike back at superstition, tyranny, and oppression of human thought and freedom, especially those perceived to be perpetuated by the Roman Catholic Church and the divinely chosen monarchies of Europe. For the better part of 2 centuries, Masonic scholars have passionately debated what, if anything, the Knights Templars have to do with Freemasonry. There is certainly no hard evidence or documents we can refer to that informs us in so many words that on such and such a date, Knights Templar went underground and set up a secret, benevolent society that employs building tools as esoteric symbols and Bible stories as moral lessons. However, many influential Masons of the past, especially those in 18th century France, enthusiastically embraced the Templars as their own predecessors. Still, supporters of an historic Templar-Mason connection can only point to the most generic elements within the rituals and liturgies of the craft that demonstrate at most a harmony of anti-clerical goals and attitudes shared by the 2 organizations. However, in the philosophical arena, where traditional history is more important than history, this in and of itself can have a profound significance. As Coyle's Masonic Encyclopedia affirms, even the most conservative Masonic commentators admit the connection has become inextricably fixed. Coyle says, this theory of Templar origin, which mythical as it is and wholly unsubstantiated by the authority of history, has exercised a vast influence in the fabrication of advanced degrees and the invention of continental rights. Unquote. As an adult, I became interested in the Templars not because of their possible connection to Freemasonry, but because I was acutely interested in the accusations leveled against them. The charges were many, but the ones that most caught my attention were those that alleged that new initiates were required to spit upon and trample a crucifix underfoot, that they were forbidden to worship the crucifix. The new knights were told that Jesus was a man, like all men. And like all men, he died. That in the higher degrees, Templars worshipped a bearded human head or an ass-headed statue called Baphomet, or Baphomet, if you want to sound French. And something that interested me very much, that they practiced magic. What a curious assortment of accusations to be leveled at a group of Christian knights. Yet there was a certain consistency in many of the confessions voiced by tortured members of the order that might lead to conclude that there was perhaps an iota of truth in these accusations. Oh, the accusation of sodomy could be leveled. If you chose to make that the big heretical act, then shut down the Boy Scouts. Okay. Or any army throughout all history. The caveman army. The Agites versus the Rockettes. But I digress. But before we open up that can of worms, let's take a very brief look at what we know about this colorful band of brothers. And I give a history of the Knights Templar and the fact that there were only 9 of them for 9 years, and that they, for some reason, were allowed to camp out on the very location, very mystical location in Jewish history of the supposed Temple of King Solomon on Mount Moriah, the Temple Mount area, in other words, for 9 years. And nobody knows what they were doing, but after 9 years, they cruised back to France and met with Eudepayin's uncle, Saint Bernard, told him something, and pretty soon the Pope was saying, "You guys can do anything you want. Okay, you're free. Okay, just behave yourselves." So anyway, whatever they found or whatever they discovered or whatever they learned, let's see, what, if anything, in particular they might have been looking for, we can only guess. But conspiracy buffs certainly think they found something or learned something very important, something in a few short years drew to them the goodwill and deference of the Church of Rome and the princes of Europe. The story of the Knights Templars' meteoric rise to power is unique in the history of Western civilization and subject of many well-researched and well-documented books and essays. Still, it's frequently hard to separate fact from legend. Curiously, for our purposes, legend is as important and relevant as fact, for religious and political movements are shaped by what people believe to be true rather than what may actually be factual. I implore the reader to keep this fact firmly in mind before I get deeper into the subject. Okay, let's see here. Okay, the Pope gave him all this. From the very beginning of their existence and for the next 200 years, popes treated the Knights Templar as if they were too hot to handle. They were allowed freedoms and privileges enjoyed by no other body in Christendom. They had their own priests, their own confessors. They were allowed to build their own uniquely styled churches. They were freed from countless other papal restrictions and supervisions. Europe's noble families soon began to lavish gifts of land and money upon the new order, and their privileged sons raced to join the poor knights of the Templar. Okay, almost overnight, and this is where the Templar tradition, or this aspect of the Templar tradition, is particularly attractive to Thelemites and those whose spiritual identity is such that there is no law beyond do what thou wilt. It's highly individualistic. It's free. Okay, you might get in trouble with the civil law or the criminal law or something else, but ultimately, on a cosmic scale, we all are laws unto ourselves. So this is where the attraction to the Templar myth, at least, holds for modern magicians who are of the Thelemic bent. Almost overnight, a new class of citizen was introduced into the feudal system of the world. A new kind of man, a free man, unencumbered by restrictions of church and state. A free man who needed no pass from bishop or king or baron or lord or magistrate to move as he will on the face of the earth, from town to town, province to province, country to country. This freedom of movement is one of the privileges of a modern Mason as well, and echoed in the Masonic ritual. When asked, what induced you to become a Mason? The proper answer begins with the words, that I might travel in foreign countries. After the Crusades, the Templars' international structure and organizational skills turned them into a super economic world army, a country without borders. Because they could skirt church laws that forbade borrowing and lending of money with interest, they set to work to become the first international, multinational mega bank. Okay. So, yeah, in 200 years they grew into a level of despicability of their own. But at the core is, anyway. Were the Templars blackmailing the world, or were they simply a dynamic idea whose time had come? If they did have something, what could it possibly have been? What could they have unearthed in that legendary spot where heaven and hell are said to touch the earth? What secret could Hugh de Payens and André de Montbard shared with the future St. Bernard and the St. Clair family that could have been so earth-shaking as to reward the Templars with a blank check from the masters of their world? Was this object, this piece of information, this treasure destroyed with them? Was the secret lost? Okay. I'm skipping ahead. The mystery of what, if anything, the Templars actually found has driven men mad for nearly 1,000 years. I'm not suggesting. Well, for some individuals, the Templar myth has become an all-consuming and unhealthy obsession. I've met a few. And in their wild and paranoid public conjectures continue to bring unfair scorn and ridicule upon the efforts of legitimate scholars and researchers. Speaking through one of his characters in the novel Foucault's Pendulum, Umberto Eco makes the following all too true observation. For him, the conspiracy, for him, everything proves everything else. The lunatic is all idée fixe, and whatever he comes across confirms his lunacy. You can tell him by the liberties he takes with common sense, by his flashes of inspiration, and by the fact that sooner or later he brings up the Templars. Unquote. Okay. I realize that by writing this book, I too am running the risk of putting myself in the above category. But run the risk I must, because whether or not their secret treasure was real or imaginary, whether or not their connection to Freemasonry is historic or merely traditional, where magic, masonry, and King Solomon's temple and the Solomon's key are concerned, the Templars do indeed have something to do with everything. Okay. Now, you might be wondering, why am I referring people that have specific questions and comments about my novel, An Accidental Christ? What does that have to do with the Templars and an alternate and more probably rational speculation about what the life of the real life flesh and blood character around whom the myth of Christ was built. I hate to stoop to this device, but you'd almost have to read An Accidental Christ, especially the part that concerns the discovery of the documents that led to the creation of the work. So, with that, I'm hoping you'll buy both of those books as a special 4th of July gesture as part of your ongoing efforts to celebrate Lon-tober. So until tomorrow, I've taken up too much time in the parking lot today. Until tomorrow, continue to be good to yourself, be good to each other, and when somebody blows up one of those loud bombs near your house tonight to supposedly separate or celebrate, I was thinking of the guillotine, celebrate the 4th of July, feel free to do something so you can yell Jacques de Molay, thou art avenged. Oh, don't do anything guillotine-y. Okay. Until tomorrow, do what thou wilt, shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. Have a great 4th of July.